you've been able to meet a few people in the room or seen a few familiar faces to have a few catch-up conversations with. Firstly, thank you everyone for taking the time to be able to make it to tonight's event, connecting internet protocols and standards with policy. As many of you know, this event is being held alongside the IETF 115. My name is Don, and I'll be your co-host this evening alongside with Mallory. Mallory, can you raise your hand so everyone knows where you are? I'm from Article 19, a human rights organization based in London, working to promote and protect freedom of expression through policy and advocacy. Article 19 has a long-standing history participating at the IETF, dating back to about 2015. The IETF's protocols facilitate how users connect to the internet safely and securely in order for them to be able to access and receive information, or for them to be able to communicate with each other and beyond. These protocols are much more vital for those living in vulnerable contexts, where accessing critical information is often blocked and filtered, or communicating with each other is often subjected to monitoring and surveillance. Some of the protocols currently being developed at the IETF, including messaging layer security, as well as encrypted client hello, some of the protocols that are furthering the support for activists, organizers, individuals and organizations working in at-risk communities, for them to be able to communicate with each other in order for them to be able to organize, provide updated information, document things on the ground, or be able to organize collective action. One of my colleagues from Article 19 NASA gave a speech at the IETF earlier this week, where she talked about how internet infrastructure and technologies can support the work of the protests occurring in Iran as of current. Since Article 19's participation at the IETF, we helped form the Human Rights Protocol Considerations Research Group. This research group brings together participants at the IETF to discuss the relationship between human rights and internet protocols. We also co-authored RFC 8280, Research into Human Rights Protocol Considerations. This was the first RFC to explicitly link internet protocols with the human rights framework. And in addition, Article 19 has an ongoing Internet of Rights Fellowship, where we work to support individuals and organizations from the Global South to be able to effectively and sustainably participate in standards development organizations, including the IETF. We actually have one of our alumni, Siobhan, in like give away. He's the co-chair of PG in Ojai, and if you don't know what that means, I definitely recommend you to come up to him to ask him about it. As an organization that works on policy and standards, Article 19 firmly recognizes the importance to be able to connect the protocols being developed at the IETF with broader policy discussions and their implications in society. We need to continue to break down these silos, translate the language across sectors and stakeholder groups, and be able to bring in new voices and perspectives in order for us to continue to design an internet that is open, interoperable, and secure. And that's why we have this event today, to bring all of you together, people from different stakeholders and sectors, people who have different experiences, a diverse skill set, knowledge, and different perspectives so that we can build a better internet. And I know some people in this room are newcomers to the IETF, and there are others who haven't had the chance to participate at an IETF meeting. And that's why, in collaboration with the Center for Democracy and Technology, Article 19 will soon be co-publishing a guide to the IETF. And this will serve as a resource and more materials to support individuals and organizations looking to participate in the important standard setting work being done at the IETF. And finally, this event would have not occurred if it weren't for the support of the IETF in agreeing for us to host this event at the Hilton London Metropole. That was a great named hotel. And special thanks to the ISG, Jay and Lars, for providing us with the space, the food, and the beverage. And a special shout out to Mallory, Lee, Berkeley, and Andrew for your ongoing support in making sure that this event happens. So I'm now going to pass the floor to Mallory, who will be facilitating our panel on the relevance of the IETF in various sectors. Thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Don, too. It's really nice to have Article 19 in London. That's why we wanted to do that, so that it's sort of a welcoming thing. And we have a lot of civil society and other participants, you all who are opportunistic here in the city. And we're glad you came to the IETF meeting. So with that, can I invite the panelists up? We're just gonna chat a bit about the relevance of the IETF. So folks, join me up here, so I'm not by myself. And we'll do introductions and so on, but while we're sitting down, I'll introduce myself. So Mallory Noodle, I'm Center for Democracy and Technology based in Washington, DC, and I regularly participate in and contribute to the IETF. I'm currently one of the co-chairs of the Human Rights Protocol Considerations Research Group. My other co-chair is Sophia Selly, who works at Brave. And yeah, in the past, works at Article 19 and also the sort of chartering co-chairs, I guess, were Niels Over from Article 19 at the time, and then Aubrey Doria, who's a longtime IETF participant. So that's sort of been the bulk of my contribution here. And so I'm moderating this panel, though. I'm not actually going to do a lot of talking. So I want the panelists to just introduce, if you can just introduce yourselves really quickly. Sort of obviously your name and where you work, but then kind of the stakeholder group you represent and whatever that means for you as you see it. So absolutely.
I'm Christopher Grover. I'm currently an information controls fellow at the Open Tech Fund, but don't tell them I said that. I'm just a fellow for a reason. I'm not supposed to identify with them. I'm speaking for myself. I guess I'm from the civil society constituency. I'm a researcher and writer. My work currently focuses on censorship in Asia. Hello everyone, my name is Chris Box. I work for BT. What I do there is mostly around the EE mobile network. So I do the design of part of that handles user traffic, and obviously then we're tasked with making that perform as well as we possibly can for our customers. So I count myself as a relative newcomer to the IETF. So I only came along in 2019 when issues started arising that meant there were impacts to how we did things that we needed to come to the IETF to talk about.
Okay, my name is Colin Perkins. I work at the University of Glasgow. I'm an academic researcher. I'm an associate professor in Glasgow. My research interests around network protocols, network transport protocols, and more recently about the way we develop standardized protocols in the IETF standards. I've been involved in the IETF for more years than I would care to mention. They previously co-chaired the audio video transport and multi-party session control working groups, building multimedia protocol standards. More recently, I'm the chair of the Internet Research Task Force.
Okay, my name is Eric Vink. I'm coming out of Belgium with a French accent, as you can guess. I would say I am paid by Cisco, but I don't work so much for Cisco anymore. You will understand why. In Cisco, I did a lot of things about IPv6 security, IPsec, and so on. But most of my work now is in the IETF. Even if I don't speak right now as an IETF, as the IETF, I am the Internet Area Director with another guy. So I'm kind of handling or managing all the working group related to IP protocols, sub-IP, MPLS, DNS, ICMP, and all that.
So you got a spread. Do you want me to remind folks?
Just check the panel.
Yeah, just a reminder, we're just going to record in an empty Zoom room, except for us. So I think the panelists all said that's cool. I wanted to follow up on a couple questions, and we'll have a little bit of time then for questions out there as well. Chris, you mentioned this, but I want to also have everyone elaborate on the issues. So what are some of the policy, and you can, I think, feel free to name them. There's going to be a lot of acronyms we can always, in our post-panel cocktail time, unpack acronyms if we need to. But what are some of the policy and tech crossover issues that have brought you to the IETF either in the past or currently? And I'll let all of you answer if you don't mind.
I think there are two streams of my work. Like I think from the research I do on censorship, like I want to bring evidence to the IETF that these security or privacy gaps and protocols are exploited by state or corporate actors to implement that censorship or surveillance. And that leads us to the second bit, where in the design and development of protocols, you can use that knowledge to say that this shouldn't happen in a forthcoming protocol, so that states cannot censor information, or states cannot censor that protocol itself, which happened in DoD, first acronym, an acronym of acronym actually. Lastly, and Mallory and I are co-authoring a draft now on a definition of end-to-end encryption. This sort of relates to another aspect of how policy and protocols are intertwined, because lots of states are trying to undermine end-to-end encryption, and what that work does is present the consensus of network engineers and technologists to say that this is end-to-end encryption and these are the properties that it shouldn't violate in order for it to be end-to-end encryption. Because many countries around the world, I mean, EU was specifically looking for a definition of end-to-end encryption. In India, where I'm from, there's this thing called traceability, where they want to trace people who are sending messages, and the government will claim it doesn't undermine end-to-end encryption. But if there was a solid definition that we all agreed on, then we could go to the Indian government and say, actually, it does violate end-to-end encryption. So yeah, those are, I think, the last one is a bitter one. The last one is where we gathered evidence of censorship on the protocols that were recently developed. For instance, when DoD and DNS over TLS and DNS over HTTPS were being developed, there was a strong argument that DoD would be censored immediately because it works on a specific port number that's easy to filter. And not that I was against the development of that protocol, but some people were against the development of DOE because they thought DoD was better designed. And soon after, my colleagues also found that DoD was censored almost immediately in Iran, and other countries. So the last part is bitter. It's like an I told you so idea. I see those three as like somewhat related with distinct work streams and why I like to participate in that.
So the question was what brought me to the IETF?
Technical policy issues that you.
And technical, So as I mentioned, as you just also mentioned, so in 2018, DNS over HTTP was developed by the IETF, and it was developed by a relatively small working group. And within that working group, there doesn't appear to have been a discussion about what the policy implications and other implications were. It was more focused on actually technically building the protocol. I was not involved in the IETF at the time. I came into it a year later when Mozilla were making their announcement of how they would deploy it, which was essentially that they would do it in a way that was relatively straightforward for them to do, which is to say, okay, we'll just upgrade Firefox users to go to this DOH service that's run by Cloudflare. So that's great in the sense that, yes, you get the privacy benefits of doing that. But the problem I had was, the problem BT had, was that it creates a whole set of consequences that we then have to manage. So examples of that are, we offer parental controls to our customers, and that relies on that DNS visibility. So it's actually the service which simply stopped working. We also like to block attacks against our customers. So we have quite a bit of expertise that looks at where are the attacks coming from, which domains are they using, we block those. That functionality will no longer be possible for our customers. There are other impacts as well, like it changes the traffic routing. So instead of kind of getting your content from the city that you are located in, it will be fetched from further away. So there's all those things that they're not reasons to say encryption is bad, because encryption is in general a positive thing. It's just how do you deploy it? How should we deploy it? How should we work together to get the right outcome for everyone?
Okay, obviously that there are, I think many different aspects of policy. As a, sorry, obviously there are many different aspects of policy. As a computer science academic, I think that the reason I started to come to IETF was to try and translate the impacts of my research into tangible outcomes. And the IETF is a fantastic venue for that, because it provides a very open, multi-stakeholder place where we can interact with the community. And whereas as an academic, I can interact with the industry, with civil society groups, governments to try and make the results of the research I'm doing into something which is deployed and can shift society. And I think, thinking a little more broadly, I think this is useful not just for an individual researcher or an individual academic, but it's something which I think government should perhaps think more about as when they are trying to think about how to turn their research policy, their research directions into concrete outputs. The IETF is one venue for that. I think the IETF perhaps offers an interesting venue for this as well, because it provides a place where we can connect research and standards, and it provides a place to perhaps get ahead of the curve and try and influence the research through research policy and researchers interacting with the community, influence the direction the IETF may be going in the future. And we've got groups like the Privacy Enhancements Group, like the Global Access Group, like the Distributed Internet Group, the Human Rights Critical Considerations Group, which are sort of clearly and explicitly touching on aspects of future network development, which are of interest to governments, policymakers, to setting the economic direction of the internet. But we've also got low-level groups doing low-level cryptographic mechanisms, and we have a group doing quantum internet, for example. And these are all aspects where a significant amount of science policy and efforts of money is spent to try and influence the direction the network is taking. I think the IETF and the IETF are fantastic venues to have that conversation to try and shift the direction.
And on my side, if you ask me which kind of policy bring me to the IETF, I would say it's not really policy that bring me to the IETF or to Cisco. It's more about building a better and more secure internet. Beside this, right, I cannot work at the IETF or in Cisco without thinking about policy. Just to give you a couple of examples, right? We have something called randomized and changing MAC address. I was late in this meeting because my working group on this was just finishing, right? 11, so I was not that late. It's basically your mobile phone or your laptop is changing every day, and simplifying, right? Your MAC address. It of course impact a couple of things. It provides you for privacy, you cannot be tracked, right? If you go twice in the same coffee shop, you will get normally two different MAC addresses, nobody can track you. That's cool. On the other hand, there were products relying on those MAC addresses to give you session. Do you want to authenticate twice in the same cafe every day? It may not. What I mean there, it means that the policy and the product with my Cisco head need to change, right? I don't think it's up to a vendor like Cisco or others to say policy is good or bad or whatever. We need to follow, period, right? We need to adapt. For instance, another thing, with the Ukraine war. It's at this time with an IETF area director. We got a draft not supported by the IETF, right? Just to be clear. We got a draft saying, hey, if you do IP address censorship, basically the goal was to cut the Russia out of the internet. Personally, I think it was to be a bad idea to do it. The authors as well think that was a bad idea. They simply wanted to describe, oh, Mr. Government or whatever, if you do this, it is a consequence. If you do this, there's the consequence, right? But I was, as an internet director, I was a bit concerned that a journalist in the room would say, hey, the IETF supports censorship for Russia. And you hope that no journalists in the room, but sometimes people make shortcuts. And Mallory and Karen and others, this morning we were in a meeting where we were talking about the DNS, which is critical for the internet, right? It's not into crypto at all, but the way we build the resolution from a name to an IP address and to a server has also a lot of policy impact. So that's very critical, right? So we spent 80 minutes on whether .art would be there. Oh, you were there as well, right? So very important. It means really that decision taken in this forum can impact heavily the life, not only the life in the sense of comfort and life well, but really life in the sense that or not of many people there. And it was before breakfast, and then I got no coffee anymore in my room. Because you know the rest, right? And the coffee was not there when I arrived in the room. Anyway, so both of these cases, right? Both on the DNS and the censorship, there is no crypto at all, right? So a lot of things people say, oh, policy and something is related to cryptography and security. It's not always the case. That's why I use those two examples there. And as well, some innovation. Like if you want, we were talking about the DNS over HTTP and so on, and a few others. Also, now I'm speaking like myself here, I think, not really, I was also for the IETF process for those. We are leading to what I call a concentration, and it's a topic that IEB has talked a lot. Because if you have a new service to provide some privacy and you rely only, and I'm paid by a US company, right, as you remember, by US corporation, as a European person, I do not like it too much. Now, there are other things, but we see more and more things going into a couple of ends, I mean, a couple of corporations, whether they are in Russia and Europe or in the US. Personally, it's not really good. When you talk about decentralized internet, I think we should go this way. The train is at the station.
I think if we had been holding this panel, I don't know, just a few years ago, one of my main questions would be, should we be talking about policy for the IETF? And I think you've all really answered that not only should we be, but we are. It is a fact. And there's a sort of ubiquitous understanding now that a lot of the decisions, or not a lot, I won't qualify it, but there are decisions and there are trade-offs that are being made that are that bring policy in. You have to have the wider view. So I guess I'll end my questions and then we can open up the mic. My last and we can keep it short, is just if you would have advice for how to talk about policy at the IETF, because I don't think it always works to, stand at the mic and start listing off, Article 20 of the, GDPR and so on. So, because it's also acronyms and the legal world, it's not always understood by engineers. So in your experience, what are some, just tips or advice you would give for folks who feel strongly about a policy situation that they would like to have discussed in the IETF? How do you understand?
Someone else wants to start.
It's true. We don't have to go in any order.
Okay, let's reverse, right? Then I'm gone, right? Can go to the champagne down. So just in case you didn't notice, right? So it's 7 p.m. In this time, I take somehow extreme position just to make discussion and get some fun, right? So, and you're right, when I arrived at the IETF with my engineering background, right? Working in engineering for many, many years, and you talk to me about policy, but it is an impact, right? I grew up in my career in Cisco and in the IETF, so it's really has an impact. and I get no real formation or education about policies. So I was kind of following, but it's really key, right? And specifically before the IETF was, when I started about 20 years ago, it was about technical issue and only technical issue. Now we take this more and more consideration, and vice versa. So I think we made progress. I've seen a learning curve, both on the engineering side and on the police side. Yeah, so thank you for bringing this.
I think I would possibly argue that you should talk about policy without talking about policy.
Okay.
Parts of the community have an allergic reaction to people who come in and talk about policy. This one's working better. Talk about policy without talking about policy. Parts of this community have an allergic reaction to people who come in and talk about policy explicitly. People who come in and raise technical points which relate to policy, they're very well received. And I realize that is perhaps difficult. It requires a certain amount of technical background. This is the challenge, is finding a way into the community. It's not necessarily always deep in technical background. There are certainly people with a sort of strong civil society background who are not deep technical experts who come in and make useful and valued contributions and shift the principles. But the community values technical arguments. Yeah, that may or may not be good. This is the reality, I think.
So one thing I've learned is the IETF is nothing like any other organization. So it has its own ways. It does appear mysterious to outsiders when you first turn up, and it helps that you mentioned writing a tutorial. There's an existing one that I read in my first year, which is called The Town of the IETF. I find that really useful, and it helped me to get up to speed with thinking of how does all this work? What's the right thing to do here and there? What's the process? The other bit of advice I have is, partner up with an experienced participant, someone who knows how it works, that can tell you there are existing programs that will find someone for you. And then the question is, how do you get across what you want to say? And I'd say there's probably two ways to do that I've seen. One is if you have the aptitude yourself to, you feel if you get your head around the technology, then you can look at the working group, you can learn a little bit about what they do and why they're doing it, how far they've got, and then once you're at that level, you can meaningfully contribute to it. And you can email the mailing list, or you can speak at the meeting, and you can probably even the best thing to do is to write a document that describes the problem you have, and it may just be describing a problem. It doesn't have to describe what the solution is, but if you know the solution, then say it, even better. And then you could submit that into the working group, and then can be discussed. But if you're an expert in policy and maybe you don't feel that you want to get up to speed with the tech, I've seen organizations, the way they approach that is they employ someone who does bridge that gap, and they can do that for them, and then that is really effective. So that's it, really.
I think everyone at IETF knows that they're making not policy decisions, but decisions that affect policy. As our friend Dr. Corin Caspers would put it, they just choose to be explicitly political whenever it's convenient or not. companies would not spend thousands of dollars sending people to the IETF if they didn't think it either gave them a competitive advantage in the market or it saves costs, right? Like, why would a company bring their own technology to a standards organization where it'll be an open standard, but they know it gives them some sort of advantage in the long run. That's how it affects the market, at least. And I mean, if you're considering issues like consolidation or competition in the market or antitrust law, then those decisions are directly related to policy. I mean, my area of work is not that, but like it's very obvious to me that, yeah, but maybe strategically you're right. Like maybe I shut up and like pretend like it doesn't, so that my life is easier. That's fine with me. I was just sharing my honest opinion. Yeah, I mean, policy subsumes law in my personal work, and by law, what I see closely is states are trying to censor information, and I know those concepts are related very closely to network security and privacy, and here they are designed, right? Like, and you would just mention an example of what values, what matters to the company and its customers, right? Like that you want parental controls, which is fine. Like, you know, companies in the US and EU, ISPs might want parental controls. For countries like India, where I'm from, that parental control is actually how the ISP will censor information for Indians, right? Like, which the Indian government doesn't find convenient. So these are all distributional conflicts, as a political scientist would describe them. And it's fine to be in this tussle, I suppose, but we should recognize that these decisions are a tussle between different actors at the IETF, and they've, I mean, frankly, we wouldn't be here unless we thought it had some sort of political impact on our company, on the population at large, or on policy.
So Gershabad's strategy is to just say it out loud. Basically, I'm just kidding. But I do like what Colin was saying. I think sometimes we, as maybe we could all put ourselves in the category of on the fringes a little bit. So even if we come or if we've heard of it, we kind of are coming maybe not with direct, purely engineering goals. I think that translation work that you were talking about, where, you know, we talk about policy without talking about policy. It's sort of like the metaphor, you know, we're dancing backwards in high heels. We're doing the translation work and then the retranslation work, and then sort of, and I think it's valuable. And I think that that's why we do it. It's important. And we're hoping with these events and with general outreach to folks on the fringes of the existing technical and IETF community specifically, that more people will feel welcome to follow along and come along with us. And so we want to keep doing this. We've been doing it, but just not always in such a really wonderful and fancy way. So I want to just thank the panel, but wait, before I do that, do you all have questions? Because I don't think we've even had a chance to use this lovely mic stand that's right in the aisle. We've had such a good conversation up here, but please do just line up. There are no blue sheets or cues, or just say it.
I'm not sure I'll just say my name, but I won't. So effectively, the IETF historically has made rough consensus decisions based on technical judgments and technical evaluations of what's the better technical way of doing these sorts of things, which way works better or whatever the trade-offs. So they're very used to doing that. Whereas now some of the decisions that are happening in terms of like encryption and privacy, the trade-offs aren't necessarily technical. They're trading off the rights of one group of people versus another group of people. So if you add more encryption in, you may be harming people in some countries but helping people in other countries. How should the IETF and how should the engineers try and balance those sorts of decisions?
That's a good question.
Sorry.
Thanks.
I think engineers always balance those decisions. Or are supposed to. Certainly when I read my code of ethics when I signed up to the ACM, it told me to balance those decisions. I think the IETF has always thought about these decisions, it's just being a little more honest than thinking about. And yes, the people down in the trenches maybe don't have the experience to think about that, but I think there have always been people in the IETF who work at a level where they have at least some understanding of these issues. And we're bringing more people in, we're getting a broader, better understanding. I think that's fantastic. So it's not new that we've been considering these issues, but just let's say being more honest that we're considering. But perhaps we need a wider set of inputs to make good choices.
So what I would add to that is, I think you're right in the sense that the engineers do want to find solutions. That's what they enjoy doing. But the step one is they need to know what the problems are. So if they're not aware that doing X will cause impact Y, they can't fix it. And sometimes those things are fixable, but sometimes they are. So first, we need to broaden the participation so that these people, whoever's affected negatively, can come in and say, look, your thing is going to do this. And that sharing of the impact is step one, and then hopefully, there's a lot of clever people at the IETF, and then maybe they can find a solution that can alleviate the impacts. And there is, we're talking about the trade-offs of encryption, and encryption by itself can prevent some services from operating, but there are other potential designs that we can still provide services that customers opt into if they want it. So if they want a malware filtering solution, they can use that, but they can do it in a private way. So it's an evolution. There is a technical design we could potentially create. So I think the IETF is really good at that kind of thing, but it starts with sharing problems. Moderator.
Okay, Rob, thank you for asking the question, because sometimes I have the same questions in my mind, right? And I simply want to emphasize what I said before. Policies is not only about crypto, right? Because discussion is about crypto, DOT, and so on. There's an impact of both. But there are other policies for, again, sustainability. Do we need, and we start to do it now, to design protocols and techniques that are sustainable, they don't burn energy like this, right? So, and the other point, we do not know always an engineer what will be the impact when we make a decision. When we know, to come back on your thing, the balance, yes, I mean, we are sensible people, there is a monolithic, we are a rough consensus. When we know the impact, we say, human being, we can make some common sense. But we do not know the impact because we cannot imagine, right? Not a crystal ball, it is more tricky.
I think I would challenge like some implicit assumptions in your question, which is that everyone is here to make decisions that benefit one set of people versus the others. Unless we're in American law and corporations are people, like sometimes it's not as simple as that, right? Like we're a very small set of people. I'm counting myself amongst them that are influencing these technical decisions. That, I mean, at least if you're talking about like a link with policy, these democratic governments can pretend to have a semblance of legitimacy that they're acting for people. As IETF participants, we know, right? Like that's just how it's stated. So, I mean, there are technical decisions that benefit corporations that may not like benefit people. And so that's like one assumption in the question. And you asked about technical like decisions, and we're all here to make technical decisions. By saying that technical decisions have policy or political impact, I'm not denying that they're not technical decisions, right? Like when I engage in working groups, I'm not like, oh, I vote for this party, therefore I want like, this to happen in this protocol. I'm just debating the technical specifics too. But yeah, just wanted to drive the point that we're a very small set of people that like make decisions for lots of people, and sometimes, in all honesty, we can't say we speak for people. no one can. So it's not easy as like, oh, it benefits this set of people versus the others. It's I think hidden more behind like who it benefits. It's not directly about set labels.
And it is a small set of people.
Yeah.
And there are people here who are happy to make distinctions.
Yeah. Okay, like what you guys.
That's what I'm thinking answer. One clarification. It's more, I think it's decisions where you're directly trading off the benefits or harm from two different groups of people. I don't really mean like corporations. I mean, individual groups of people might be harmed by more encryption, and other groups of people might be harmed by less encryption. And so you make a trade-off between different sets of people. You're causing harm to one of those two groups, unless you can find an engineering solution that works both.
I hear what you're saying. I think it's similar to, and this is authority one, right? The sort of, we've been, I think sometimes these debates get a little polarized, where there's a view that, you know, child protection versus the privacy advocates or something. So they're both civil society. How do you decide, like, which do you pick? But I don't, as a civil society advocate that works a lot on that particular issue, and hopefully not forever, they're really not actually that polarized, right? That's a bit shadow boxing. So, you know, if I, for example, work for maybe more on the privacy side of advocacy, but we include actually children in that, and we include especially children that may have intersections of issues, like they are queer or LGBTQ, or they're marginalized, or there's other sorts of things. So actually, a lot of that work is being done in the civil society organizations. But then your question, how does that reach the IETF, and how do engineers, how do they read between the lines? How do they know that inside baseball from the human rights side? And that's where my comment was going to come in anyway. But thanks for putting a finer point on it. That I think what we've done in the past in terms of how to build civil society capacity to come, it's not really a sort of full democracy where we're trying to find folks on the street who have feelings about protocols. We're really focusing on established human rights organizations that are part of the UN system, for example, as multi-stakeholder organizations that are, you know, they're registered with the UN, they're engaged in these things, and building those folks' capacities to also then do some of the more technical design stuff. So it isn't just any old folks who say, well, I represent the public interest, or I am, you know, a child protection advocate, or I am a vociferous, you know, I feel strongly about the environment or whatever. It's more just, yeah, we're actually trying to build institutional capacity, but from folks that are in the human rights side. So that's one thing. I think there are, of course, going to be all sorts of folks that can run in, because the IETF, one of its, I think, more important aspects is that you can come as an individual. It is open. We're not gatekeeping here. But I think in terms of like building the relationships and thinking about who's saying what and how does that really, what does that really mean? I would actually say that we're trying to focus on that as well. So anyway, I don't want to keep everybody from the snacks and drinks in the back. Also, we want Lars to say a few words, but maybe there's one or two more questions. So we can, yeah, oh, thanks, Rob. Really appreciate coming to the mic on that one.
Are we recording, just for clarity?
Yeah, there is a recording, but
So there might not be any, it's just what I'm going to say, Mallory, shut me down. I think there's three really important things to say. First is, policy is not the same everywhere. This touches on something Eric said. The policy people who walk into the community are thinking regulations and laws. But from a technical perspective, policy is very much about, it's a set of guidelines and business decisions that you make to keep a service up, or so that your software is running, or right, like there, it is not necessarily about regulations. You have to be very clear when we're having conversations about policy, what kind of policies are we talking about first? We want to have a conversation. Second is, there needs to be a level of honesty coming into the conversation. And I think here, from a technical perspective, very few in the community will be receptive to the right technical solution being determined by a set of laws and regulations that are emerging. I think they would look for something that's much more collaborative in nature, because everybody wants evidence-based regulations and rules. So walking into the conversation, it's important to say, you know. That level of honesty is not so much as that, like, we can't do a thing, it's that you're messing with my revenue stream. Let's try and find a better solution. And that gets into the third thing, which is if you want to have a conversation with technical communities, you need to have some credibility. And shadowing the real issue by making up other stuff is going to get people kicked out of the room. And I feel for the Doe example, because it's not about encryption. There's all kinds of IP and routing and other things that matter here. But the Doe argument is very simply, all of those criticisms go away if every resolver on the planet decided to support Doe. Let's figure out how to get there, because people still get what they want. If the world is Doe, everybody wins. And that's a matter of credibility. I think that's a conversation people love to have. I just want to point out these three things.
That was really nice to end on. I don't know if there are responses. Would you like to weigh in? Go for it.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm not haven't been saying that there was a bad thing. And then my point is it's how we use it. So you suggested, you know, if every resolver supported it, it's true that wouldn't, you know, that would not in itself create issues. However, it would, that was not the model that Mozilla was proposing. So if it was available,
We appreciate if you want to continue this discussion.
Yeah, that's true, actually. The element of honesty here was finding a joint way forward. And that is something I think that is often missing in the policy discussion. If one side wants and one side wants, we should be finding a way forward.
and that is my hope too.
Is there time for a non-dual question?
We're getting up to talk about Doge. Come on.
I will just quickly say that when I was speaking about policy, sure, I was speaking in perhaps a narrow way about government policy and all, if that's not the consensus view, sorry. But on the second question, I don't think we need to be always this skeptical of the government regulating tech. Like, for instance, nothing connected to the IETF, I think, at least not a concrete link that I know of, is sure, like data protection legislation regulates technology and policy around it in a way. We can't be like, no, don't do data protection legislation, like let's all techies come in and move and decide, you know, how to keep the data private. That's not a good solution. And like, this is coming from a skeptic of usually bad tech regulation. So I say, like, generally we also shouldn't be this skeptical from as a principle about regulation of tech. Sure, we can say, you know, the encryption schemes that are supposed to be supported by DLS should not be decided by the way. I'm on board, and I would just like make the distinction between what sort of technical decisions we think are good for like a group of techies like the IETF make versus you know, something the industry will collaborate against because it increases their cost but benefits the government.
I guess I was just going to say that I don't think the IETF should think too deeply about law or legal stuff. I think the IETF decides certain principles and it publishes RFCs about it. Like, you know, we decided that privacy is important, even if sometimes it has like, you know, bad consequences. But we think that overall, you like, this is just, you know, this is RFC 6973, and now we've established that the IETF will always, in a sense, like have, you know, will care about privacy, even if it has unintended consequences. And like, you know, we say that IETF will care about end users as opposed to corporations or whatever. So I feel like it's really useful when it's like, these are our axioms. And even if there are, you know, other issues that come up, like, those are like built on top of these axioms. So in that sense, we don't really like, the IETF doesn't like balance like one set of issues against the other. I think we just kind of operate off of those principles, and then everything just kind of comes up.
To the extent that we gain community consensus for those principles. That has never been easy, as the IETF gets more diverse, it's very hard.
Thank you guys. really appreciate you coming and thanks for the questions. We just want to invite Lars because this work is, well, we can go. We can sit down here. Lars, you can come here. And it's just more that we have some alignment, I think, about the operations, right?
Thank you, Lori. And then. Yeah, so if I don't get invited, you can still not technical panels. I just like, so I want to thank visitors, that is a great meeting. I don't know whose idea it was, that we create a miniature IETF working groups thing up here. It worked really well, right? A bunch of our participants immediately went into technical arguments on DNS over HTTP. Because it's like, if you're an IETFer and on Thursday and you enter a space with like microphones there, it's automatically your brain goes into, I need to, convince these people of my views. Anyway, but thanks a lot to all of you. I think we do try to have more meetings like this. Had one on Monday night with the government folks here, and that was a very good meeting too. This is actually a better meeting because there's a social area in the back. So if there's any of the government people for Monday night, make sure that you pay attention to the public sector meetings that happen here. They're better in terms of support. I also want to apologize because for a long time, like those of us in sort of on the management level of the IETF team who approved these sort of side meetings, we were very confused about whether this on Monday night and this on Thursday night were the same meeting or not. And we were sort of going around, and it turns out that neither of those two groups did either because they couldn't tell whether somebody else had talked to us already. And it was literally like, going in circles. And then, but I think we figured it all out. I'm glad we have these two meetings. I think they're actually kind of similar, but sort of they look at the same sort of puzzle of issues from different angles. And it's really fascinating. And I want to leave you with 1 point or 2 points. So one is like IETF, is not really a thing, right? Because it's all individuals, and even those that have been here for a really long time, I've been here since 2000, right? I cannot tell before like a hum happens or a decision what the outcomes are, kind of guesses, right? But you surprised how often I'm wrong, even after like all this time, right? Because it really depends on what motivates people, like how does the consensus building go? Who has the better arguments? Who's in the room or not? It's fascinating. The other thing that I think I talked to Bryn about this yesterday, she came up earlier. We did an all of IETF survey last year, which we have like 55,000 people that have subscribed to at least one of our mailing lists. And so we sent them a survey for the very first time ever, and there was a bunch of questions in there. And the most surprising and eye-opening result for me was the one question was, amongst the hours per week that you put to the IETF, who pays for that? Because we talked about operators and vendors and like corporate interests and all that. Pretty much exactly 33% of the hours are private time. So a third of the time spent on the IETF any given week on the planet is people's private time. And I think so it's not just this corporate environment. And that plays a whole lot, right? Because people actually care way more deeply about decisions at the IETF because oftentimes it's their hobby or their passion. And that's good and bad, right? Because it's not just professional organization discussions. It is people's, political and religious, if you want, beliefs, right, that are brought to the microphone into the session. And that makes it fascinating and hard. And to keep that in mind, right, because while many of us are paid to do this work, like not everybody is, and those people have the same standing, and they do influence the outcomes, oftentimes pretty drastically so. Right, so I said way more than I wanted to say. Thank you, Mallory and others, Article 9 TCP for organizing this. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you sort of have a chance maybe to come back tomorrow if you haven't had a chance to go to actual sessions. Enjoy the wine, enjoy the food, enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.